Welcome everybody. I am Monique Harrison-Beckford. I'm an attorney at law and partner with Harrison & Harrison. I am what we would call a conveyancing attorney, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the conveyancing process. So, you've decided that you're ready to purchase. What do you do after making that big decision? Well, the first thing is for you to determine what type of property you're purchasing and what's the reason for the purchase. Is it a property that you're doing for an investment purposes, something that you'd like to get some rental income, or is it your first home? Depending on the reasons behind the purchase, this can color our first steps. Step one, identifying the property that you are going to be acquiring. Is it a new development or is it a property that is currently existing? One of the benefits of working with a real estate agent or broker is that they would come armed with information on the project, including price points, unit sizes, etc., and that helps to give you a feel of what the proposed project will look like at the end, especially when you're in the early phases. With an existing building, it's easier. You walk it, see it, go visit the property, carry someone with you. Make sure that you're comfortable with the property and its environs. Once you've gotten that out of the way, you will get ready to prepare the offer to purchase. The offer to purchase would set out the price for which you're willing to purchase a property for. The parties, who will the purchasers be? Will it be you? Will there be a spouse, a family member, or will you be using a company? Does that company exist? Other terms would include, how are you going to finance this acquisition? Will it be cash or will it be mortgage? The deposit. Deposits are the payments that are done on signing. These are typically 10%. So the offer has been accepted and we can now move on to stage two. This is the period that the attorneys get actively involved in the transaction. This is also when the deposit that we spoke about earlier becomes payable. It's really important to try to ensure that payments of the deposit, and in fact all funds moving under a conveyancing transaction, are paid directly and through attorneys. So you've paid a deposit, you've signed the agreement for sale, what's next? The agreement for sale is, once it's been signed by all the parties, meaning not only you, the purchaser, but also the seller, the contract is dated, and that's when the timeline for completion starts to run. This is a time when you begin the process of formally applying for your mortgage loan and doing the necessary due diligence checks on the property. So the signed sale agreement and all your due diligence documents are then typically submitted to your mortgagee. And it's at this point that the loan is formally considered by the financial institution. So the conveyancing process is one that follows certain standard steps and procedures, but we should also bear in mind that each transaction is unique, each purchaser is unique, and each property. There are certain tips that I'd like to share with you today that should hopefully help to prepare you better for the process. So tip number one relates to the expenses and the costs associated with conveyancing transactions. So not only do we have to pay for the property, we also have to pay for, and the due diligence reports we've spoken about, we also have to pay what are commonly referred to as costs of transfer. So these costs of transfer typically start at 2.25%. The 2.25 covers just the government and registration fees, and in addition to this, you'll also have the fees that are charged by attorneys. You'll also have the fees that are charged by the mortgagees in the preparation and registration of your mortgage loan. One of the key things that I like to do with my clients, and I would suggest that you make a similar request, is that you get an upfront statement of account from the attorney. And this statement of account should set out as all those costs of transfers and professional fees, so that you enter the transaction knowing what the total cost will be. Another tip relates to your due diligence investigations. When should you do it? When is the best time? My preferences and my suggestion would be that you try to do some of it before you enter into contract and pay the deposit. At a minimum, a surveyor's identification report should be done so that you have a clear idea as to the property, its boundaries, and if there are going to be any legal issues that could adversely affect your property acquisition. Think really keenly about who the parties to the transaction will be and whose names are going to go on the title. A lot of times we decide to include persons in our land transactions and on the titles out of fear that we don't want to hold or acquire property alone. You need to understand it's okay. There is no increased risk in holding real estate alone. Final tip that I'd like to share with you today is to really encourage you to ask questions. If you don't know, if you're anything you're unsure of, ask. A good legal team such as Harrison & Harrison and JMMB Bank work together to ensure that from beginning to end the transaction is seamless.